Our presenter for this month is Lisa Swing Corney from LifeRing Secular Recovery. Substance use disorder affects many people both directly and indirectly. When someone thinks about getting clean and sober, AA and the 12-step treatment centers typically come to mind. While a great many people have been helped by AA, there are also many people for whom AA and the 12-step methodology with its religious origins and one-size-fits-all approach do not feel like a good fit. Too few people have any awareness of secular recovery pathways. LifeRing Secular Recovery is one of those pathways. Rather than requiring surrender to a higher power, LifeRing believes in empowering your sober self. Increased public awareness and other various available recovery approaches to substance use disorder is crucial. LifeRing can't help everyone, no single approach can, but LifeRing can help a great many people. To encourage recognition of recovery solutions like LifeRing, we need to get the word out, not just to people battling substance use disorders, but also their families, healthcare providers, and communities. Additionally, those whose loved ones are seeking help through LifeRing or other approaches should be able to enthusiastically support their loved ones without fear that a lack of doing the steps will cause their loved one harm. Lisa, our presenter, is a wife, mother, daughter, proud owner of an 8-year-old puggle, avid Trekkie, and a person in long-term recovery. She's the LifeRing Frontier Regions Coordinator and a LifeRing convener. There we go.
Convener.
Facilitator. Lisa's passion for helping others find and maintain recovery and for helping to bring LifeRing Secular Recovery into new areas and communities. So with that, I will turn it over to Lisa.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me. I always appreciate the opportunity to talk about LifeRing. I'm very passionate about it. So I'm going to proceed. If you have not filled out the survey, please do. I've been kind of looking at the results. Thank you to those who have. So first I'm going to tell you just a little bit about LifeRing, and then a little bit more about why it's important that people know about LifeRing and groups like it. So LifeRing Secular Recovery is a network of secular support groups for people who have substance use disorder and are wanting to do something about it. Substance use disorder, for those, if that may sound strange, that's sort of the term that's used now rather than addiction, or there's been a big trend in using non-stigmatizing language. You know, if you think about, even close your eyes for a second and picture a person with substance use disorder. Well, you might picture me because I just, but and what that looks like, and then think about the word addict or alcoholic, and I know even me, I get extremely different pictures in my mind when I think of those terms, and they're not positive. So substance use disorder feels kind of like a mouthful sometimes, but so LifeRing is for anyone who wants to get clean and sober, to stay clean and sober, and LifeRing's definition of sobriety is free from alcohol or other non-medically indicated drugs. And that non-medically indicated drugs is a really crucial piece to LifeRing's philosophy. Medically assisted treatment, another mouthful maybe, but medications that are prescribed to people to reduce cravings and things like that are being used more and more by professionals in helping people with substance use disorder. LifeRing does not interfere with the doctor-patient relationship, and we don't tell people that they shouldn't use those things. And unfortunately, sometimes that happens in other types of support group meetings, where people are told they shouldn't be, no, you can't take that, or you can't. So LifeRing, I think just takes a much more common sense approach. The basis of LifeRing is positive social reinforcement. I mean, we get together in meetings, either online or in person, mostly online now. Although in Akron, one of our 3 meetings, we started meeting outside, weather dependent at the moment. And the meeting process is meant to empower the sober self within the participants. Empowerment is a big concept with LifeRing. We are not powerless over our addiction. We want people to feel empowered to do what's necessary, and we want them to know that they have that ability within themselves. Okay. So these numbers, don't hold me to them. We currently have over 75 online meetings. Pre-pandemic, we had about 4 or 5. So things have drastically changed. We also have a few hybrid meetings where there may be an in-person presence, but also people joining virtually. Those are kind of hard to pull off, but it's an awesome concept. So pre-pandemic, LifeRing had 200 plus in-person meetings worldwide. Honestly, we're not even sure how many we have still meeting in person. We have meetings that, like I said, are hybrid. Some are meeting outside. Some are just on hiatus. Some have moved online. A lot plan on going back to face-to-face. Some are like, hey, this online thing's pretty cool and want to stick with that. We are definitely in a period of transition, just like everybody else. We also have email groups. And a forum, Delphi, for those of you who can remember those things, and the forum's active still. This is just like a pretty picture, right? So LifeRing has or had pre-pandemic, or kind of still has, a physical presence in these countries: Canada, the US, the UK, Australia, Sweden, Ireland, Scotland. Actually, well, that would be part of the UK. We have a current online. We have had brand new meetings start during the pandemic, although certainly not what we had been seeing prior to the pandemic. And okay, so I didn't skip. I'm not. I need to. Give me 1 second here. That's not working. Okay. I need to check my slides. And now I have managed to make all of you disappear. So until I get you to come back. I always manage to do that somehow with Zoom. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm sorry. I can no longer see faces. So you're definitely going to have to give me an auditory heads up when I pause if there's a question. So why is it important? Why do I feel definitely that it's important that not just people with substance use disorder know more about options like LifeRing? Well, substance use disorder is a big issue. According to a national survey, this was 2019, 19.3 million people 18 or older had some kind of a substance use disorder. That's a lot of people. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard of the opioid epidemic, the overdose epidemic. Those numbers were coming down, and unfortunately they started going up in 2019. And they have been going up during the pandemic. Interestingly, though, I read an article a few weeks ago that the areas that had the highest increase in overdose deaths during the pandemic were not the areas that were in strict lockdowns. That was not what was contributing to this. But all of our lives have been thrown into some turmoil, and that probably accounts for these numbers. So somebody who has a substance use disorder, they deserve to have information about all the treatment options, not just AA or NA, but groups like LifeRing. There are also other secular groups, Smart Recovery, SOS, which actually LifeRing split off of back around 2000. And I think this is a really crucial point. Loved ones should feel confident that they can support someone who's choosing to participate in LifeRing, and without fear that their loved one is going to die because they're not working the steps. That's a message that's just out there in society so much that I've seen a lot of loved ones who really gave some strong pushback to people who were thrilled to find something like LifeRing and it was working for them, but their loved ones were scared because they didn't think anything other than AA and working the 12 steps could help them. And I may have said it already. If not, a lot of people have been helped by AA and the 12 steps. We are not against AA, and I don't mean anything that I say to give that impression. But it's not for everybody. The LifeRing's not for everybody. AA is not for everybody. No one thing is going to work for everybody.
I have a question.
Sure.
Are there ever situations where law enforcement agencies require that somebody attend something like AA? Does that ever happen? I'm maybe making this up.
Oh, no, you're not. Thank you for the question. That happens a lot. There are a lot of people who in recovery, let me try that again. In the recovery vernacular are, quote, on paper, meaning they have to get a paper signed by somebody at the meeting stating they attended. They're required to attend so many meetings. That would be people who are on probation, people on parole, people, under some kind of, in 3/4 houses, community correctional facilities, people who are in treatment programs, outpatient treatment programs, inpatient treatment programs, even towards the end of people's stay, typically start to have people independently leave to go to meetings. A lot of times the meetings they want people to go to are strictly AA. Sometimes they'll allow other 12-step. Things are improving, but there's still a lot of pressure. And actually there have been court cases about this. But, we're in Ohio. We had a court case about school funding, and nothing changed there. So things are changing somewhat, but just because there have been court cases that said requiring attendance at AA because of its religious/spiritual aspects is not legal, that does not mean it is not done a lot. That's an excellent question. Thank you. And did I fully answer it? Because I can't figure out how to get your pictures back.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate your answer.
Ah, there you guys are. Oh, that's so much better. Wow. That was like really weird just speaking into the void. Okay. You'll probably disappear again on me, Lisa. I'm not good at this Zooming stuff necessarily. Remind me at the end with questions. I can give you a little more information about the court case I referred to, and give you. I can provide a link to actually a pamphlet we have that covers a court case in California. So actually, your question led me into this. It was perfect. Next slide. The ubiquity of the 12 steps in the treatment community and just in the minds of society. And so the majority of treatment facilities exclusively use the 12-step models as their program. And those that aren't exclusively 12-step, almost all of them encourage 12-step participation. There is something in the treatment industry which still boggles my mind, and I'm thinking about, I'm going to explain this to you, and you guys might not even believe me, but it's called 12-step facilitation. It's a billable service. Treatment facilities, treatment providers do a lot of this. Basically what it is teaching the patients about the 12 steps of AA, basically. NA's 12 steps are very similar. You know, all the 12 steps, there's a lot of 12-step programs, and they're all, and some of them aren't even for substance use disorder, but they're all based on those original AA 12 steps. So 12-step facilitation teaches people about the 12 steps, why they're so important and crucial to their recovery, and it teaches them how to go to meetings. It does not sound like a valid medical treatment, and yet it is. Well, it's considered. And again, I'm not trying to insult AA. A lot of people have been helped, but 12-step facilitation just kind of boggles my mind. So there have been books written about this ubiquity of the 12-step model. One of them is The Sober Truth, Debunking the Bad Science Behind 12-Step Programs and the Rehab Industry. And its author wrote, most of the expensive, famous rehab centers that base their treatment on the 12 steps likewise have offered no evidence for their effectiveness. Most of them don't even study their own outcomes. This was published in 2015. Looking at outcomes is something that treatment industry has maybe just started to delve into in the last, 5-10 years, a little bit. So lack of awareness among clinicians. The people who are treating someone with substance use disorder, counselors, psychiatrists, psychologists, 12 steps. Somebody has a substance use disorder, 12 step is what comes to mind. I ran across this paper about referral to 12-step programs after treatment. This was published in 2005. It was a very interesting paper, though. It looked at all kinds of treatments, because support groups are just one part of treating a substance use disorder. Therapy might be another part. Specific types of therapy, CBT, DBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy. There's a whole host of various, psychological treatments in addition to support groups. But this study looked at a lot of them and found and asked about if treatment professionals had any knowledge of anything other than in 12-step programs, and a large majority did not. And interestingly, out of those that did have knowledge of some things, perhaps like LifeRing or SMART or Women for Sobriety, they still referred everybody to AA. And part of that reason, it may be a lot of treatment professionals are themselves people in recovery who may have gotten sober through AA and the 12 steps. Although there has been in recent years a strong trend and towards having recovery coaching. It's like a paraprofessional position. They have some training, and they're just there's somebody who they're a support and they listen, and they're not a sponsor, although there may be some overlap there. They're not meant to work the steps with people or anything like that. But so out of recovery coaches, and there's also a few other terms that are used. A lot of recovery coaches are more open-minded. They are very interested, and I know several, in fact, that even though they got sober through AA, they've started LifeRing meetings because they really believe that, hey, this worked for me, but I want these options for the people I work with. And that's an awesome trend, and hopefully that will continue. The Peer Alternatives for Addiction, or PAL study, I believe this study started in 2015. The first publication was 2017. That's not that long ago. This was the first study that looked at attendance at AA meetings next to attendance at other support group meetings. It's very significant. If you search a database like PubMed or something, which is where you can find an index of published medical papers and peer-reviewed journal papers, you will find thousands of papers that prove the effectiveness of AA in maintaining sobriety for people. However, they never looked at other groups. So were they proving that AA was that effective, or were they proving that support and support groups are effective? And this PAL study was the first study to ever look at that. And the conclusion was what us here in this group would probably guess. The conclusion was support groups work, and they're very helpful, and people do better. And it doesn't matter, really, there's some differences, but it doesn't matter if it's AA or Women for Sobriety, or the support group that's going to work for you is the one that you feel like it's a best fit, which feels like common sense, but the world does not always run on common sense. The lead researcher in this study did a presentation at a LifeRing conference, and I really like this one quote from the presentation. Members of the alternatives get about the same bang for their buck for their participation versus 12-step. I think that just sort of sums it up. There's actually, right now, they are in the process of doing a follow-up PAL-2 study, which is great because for me, as a person who tries to promote LifeRing and amongst professionals and treatment facilities, and I don't know if you guys would know this, but I'm in Akron, Ohio. That's the birthplace of AA. That's where Founders Day is every year. That's, Dr. Bob's house. It's a pretty strong 12-step oriented treatment environment.
Yeah.
So in 2013, when I started a LifeRing meeting, there was not a lot of buy-in from the professionals. That is changing. It is changing. I actually now sometimes have counselors, actually from St. Thomas, which has a original connection to like Ignatia Hall, Sister Ignatia. I don't know if any of these terms you guys have heard them, but this is AA lore. She was the nun who snuck the drunks in and created the first detox ward. This is, talked about in AA. Everybody knows these names. But so St. Thomas, I have counselors contacting me, asking me to send them information and pamphlets on LifeRing so they can give them to their clients. That's way different than it was in 2013, and hopefully things will continue to improve. Somehow I lost my little slide with the word cloud. I guess I'll try to get back to that later. I don't know what happened to that. That's interesting. Give me 1 second. I'm going to go ahead and share it because that tied it. It was supposed to be, I don't know what happened to it. I must have skipped it. Oh, okay. So I'm going to stop this for a second, and I am going to screen share the results. Can you guys see the? So, yeah, this is actually a little more positive, a little more secular, a little more life-ringy than I kind of anticipated, but that's a good thing. But certainly AA is there. I believe the AAA was meant to be AA. Helpful, rational recovery. Yeah, that's another Alcoholics Anonymous, of course. Yeah. So you didn't disprove my point, but I was smart. That may, I believe that's probably referring to Smart Recovery, and that's an acronym for Self-Management Addiction Recovery Training, but don't hold me to that because I mess it up all the time. SMART is a secular cognitive behavioral therapy based support group. There are a lot of people who actually go to both SMART and LifeRing. I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint.
I mistakenly voted twice, but my answer appeared only once.
Because actually you were supposed to be allowed to vote twice. I don't know.
Well, I hit vote and then the ballot opened up blank and I thought, oh, maybe it didn't get received. So I typed the same word a second time and then sent it. It didn't appear twice, thankfully.
Well, that's okay. Did you help me prove my point? Or yeah, that's fine. That was hardly, scientific. Yeah. Okay. Oops, it went. Yeah. Let me get back to where I need to be. Okay, are you guys seeing I seem to be having trouble getting the. Oh, there we go. Okay, it's not sharing yet, right?
No, it is not.
Okay. Let me see. There we go. I have to do the right sequence of events, and I apologize. I got off of my So, LifeRing has a few things it's based on. It's pretty simple. We have what we call the 3S philosophy: sobriety, secularity, and self-help, or sometimes self-determination. We use that word. So I've already talked about the significance of the abstinence from alcohol and non-medically indicated drugs. So that, medically indicated drugs, that's not our business. And if you're appropriately using something that's perhaps helping you with cravings, there's a lot of evidence that shows that works. That, we are supportive of members appropriately taking medically indicated, that's a mouthful, psychoactive medications prescribed by an informed professional. This includes medically assisted treatment and pain management medications. I know some people in recovery, long-term recovery, who have some severe chronic pain issues. They treat them with potentially addictive pain medications, but they use it appropriately. I don't believe that because somebody is in recovery, they should be having to suffer. And we do not make distinctions about what your drug of choice is. I'm really not sad to leave that term behind. You might hear it occasionally. It's really emphasized strongly in treatment and programs. But if you have a substance use disorder, you're welcome in LifeRing, and want to do something about it, you're welcome in LifeRing. You don't LifeRing meetings. You don't introduce yourself with your specific addiction. You won't hear, "Hi, I'm Lisa. I'm an alcoholic," or, "Hi, I'm Lisa. I'm addicted to meth." We're all here for the same reason. We have substance use disorder. We want to help each other get better and have better lives, and so we don't make those distinctions. We are definitely secular. I'm sure in this group, I don't need to explain what that word means. Sometimes there are a lot of people who don't understand what secular means, and trying to explain the concept it's like unfathomable to them. So we don't have closing prayers. We don't talk about religion. Frequently meetings end in a round of applause. But we're not anti-religion. If someone has, as a part of their personal recovery plan, attendance at church every Sunday, I, as a convener, which is what we call like meeting facilitators, I am not going to, say they can't say that. Good, great for them. Just don't try and convince me I need to do that, because, we don't want you to go on and on about it. But sure, you can mention you go to church. And actually, according to internal surveys we've done, I believe in maybe 2006 and 2013, might be off on this. About 40% of LifeRing participants attend a church or other place of worship at least once a year. People don't just come to LifeRing because they're looking for a less religious option. Some of them don't take to the 12 steps and that methodology. Some of them just like sort of the informality of LifeRing meetings. So we're provide peer support. Typical LifeRing meeting, the topic is, how was your week? Although, it could be, how was your 2 weeks if you haven't been to a meeting in 2 weeks, or how was your 2 days if you were at a recent meeting, or, But we try and center on what's going on with us now and what are our challenges. and specifically to sobriety and just in life in general, because, you know, getting clean and sober, staying clean and sober, that can be really hard. And anything that throws our life into turmoil can be a challenge to our sobriety, you know, not just things that are obvious, like attending a wedding where everybody's drunk. Just anything that's extremely emotional could put us in a place that, you know, perhaps might be a risk to our sobriety. So LifeRing meetings, we talk to each other and we offer suggestions and we ask questions. And we laugh a lot. There's a lot of laughter in LifeRing, which I love. It's not to say we don't take anything seriously, but you hear a lot of laughter in LifeRing meetings, which to me says people are comfortable, which is good. You also, something I hear a lot, you know, somebody I might be sharing about, you know, something going on with me, perhaps maybe I have to go visit my mother, and maybe that's a contentious relationship, and somebody, when I finish talking in the meeting, might say, so, you know, are you anxious about visiting your mother? Are you, you know, I hear a lot. That's a good question, you know, that people are led to think about something that perhaps maybe was in the back of their head, but the LifeRing meeting sort of brings it to the forefront. So another major concept with LifeRing is the idea of the addicted self versus the sober self. And when I first saw this, I went, that just makes so much sense. I got sober in 2001. I spent 29 days in a 12-step facility. I carried around a copy of Free Inquiry with me, like other people carried the big book, just trying to figure out, really, I mean, this sounds melodramatic, but how to survive in that environment as an atheist. It wasn't easy. It isn't easy for a lot of people, and you know, that really needs to change. But so I spent like 10, 11 years in 12-step programs before discovering LifeRing. Now, as I mentioned earlier, LifeRing started in around 2000. That's about when I was getting sober. You know, the internet was not what it is now. I mean, I had no way of knowing it even existed. But when I discovered LifeRing and this concept of the addicted self versus the sober self, it just made so much sense. And the idea is that, you know, regardless of how bad somebody's substance use disorder may be, there's always this little piece of them that wants something different, that wants sobriety. And maybe they don't even want sobriety. They just want something different. I mean, you know, that's okay. It's a start. And what LifeRing meetings do is help strengthen that sober self within us. When people are having sober conversation and interacting with one another, and it helps both of them. It's pretty simple, but it's drastically different than the 12-step methodology. So LifeRing believes in empowering your sober self. And we have a book called Empowering Your Sober Self. It's a simple but awesome concept. We have several books. Some people in LifeRing read them, some do not. Recovery by Choice is a workbook. People may choose to use it. We have a few workbook-specific meetings, a couple of them online now. Empowering Your Sober Self is the book written by Marty Nicholas, that kind of the first book that LifeRing had. How Was Your Week is a book that delves deeper into LifeRing philosophy, and it's kind of a handbook for conveners, people who lead meetings. Humanly Possible is a collection of stories not just from LifeRing, but I believe also from Women for Sobriety and Smart Recovery, just how people found sobriety in a secular manner. And so LifeRing, we don't have steps. We don't have sponsors. We don't, the workbook, you can use it if you want. You cannot. We believe everybody's got to develop their own personal recovery plan. That's what's going to work for them. I can share with people in the meetings I go to some of the things that worked for me, and I know they worked for me, but I can't tell somebody else you have to do, A, B, and C. And a recovery program is something that isn't set in stone. As your life changes, as your circumstances changes, as you have more sobriety under your belt, your recovery plan may change. So here's some of the ways we are similar to 12-step programs, AA, NA, any of the others. Group support, abstinence, and the meetings are confidential. We respect confidentiality. Just because we don't have anonymous in the name of our organization doesn't mean we don't respect people's confidentiality. But here's some of the ways we are different. We see the power to get clean and sober within each person. It's not external coming from our higher powers. We believe it's within you. Although you're certainly free to believe in God or some other higher power, or doesn't matter which substances, were your primary issue, because, they can all become an issue. We encourage crosstalk, and that may not make any sense to anybody else. I don't think if you've watched a TV show or a movie where they were portraying an AA meeting, typically it's somebody speaking, and then everybody claps, and then maybe somebody else speaks. And so if I were in a 12-step meeting and somebody was talking about something and I tried to ask a question or even say, hey, I'm great, I'm glad you shared, that would be considered crosstalk. And you're not supposed to do that. And that's their method, but actually LifeRing does the opposite. We encourage people to ask questions and offer encouragement and suggestions, perhaps what worked for them. I talked about how was your week, crosstalk. We LifeRing definitely does not. You may have heard the term a drunkalogue or a drugalogue. That sometimes in recovery meetings, people just sort of get up and start talking about all the times they drove drunk and how drunk they were and how, that's a drunkalogue. Yeah, we know those things happened, and you may need to talk about some negative consequences, but we don't want to hear details that are just going to activate that addicted self within other people in the meeting. That's not really serving a purpose. And we are at the end. I should mention LifeRing.org is our website. It's pretty easy to remember. Here's my email. If you would have any questions, feel free to reach out. If you go to LifeRing.org, I will try to. And look at our pamphlets. We have a pamphlet called Choice in Recovery. It's the law. And this talks about a case in 2013. It was I believe that's the 6th district there that California's in. This gentleman was on probation, and part of his probation was he had to go to an inpatient treatment center for substance use disorder. And he was sent to a 12-step facility. And he was eventually kicked out because he was not fully participating in the 12-step meetings and activities. And because he was kicked out, they revoked his parole. Because he lost his freedom over this, he won a pretty sizable judgment monetarily that was paid out by a county in California. There have been other court cases. This one was kind of extreme because the individual lost his freedom because of what had transpired and was reincarcerated. But for me, one of the interesting takeaways is I happen to know that the county that had to pay out the money, it still took 2 years before that county allowed a LifeRing meeting within one of their county facilities. Now, you would have thought that they would have been jumping at, yeah, okay, cool, we don't want to have this happen again. And there was still this resistance that it took 2 years of struggling to get a LifeRing meeting allowed to go into a county facility. Anyway, so questions?
So I'm going to go first if anybody else doesn't have a question. So we've got some people who unfortunately aren't here, but might be interested. Say if someone wanted to start a LifeRing group in Columbus, how would they do that?
That's a good question. Thank you. And thank you for posting the link. Yes, to the Recovery by Chat. Thank you so much. Good backup. LifeRing meetings are led, they're peer support meetings. So they're led by people in recovery. So anybody who is in recovery themselves, who has 6 months or maybe approaching at least 6 months of sobriety, free to reach out to me. That's actually one of the things I do is, as the Frontier Coordinator, is help people who are starting meetings. It can be difficult to get attendance. It can be really challenging. We also sometimes have treatment professionals start meetings. They may or may not be in recovery themselves. But the goal is that they turn it over to a person in recovery as soon as possible. And we've had a few instances in recent years where community members who wanted to see this available partnered with somebody in recovery, perhaps somebody who may not quite have that 6-month sobriety time. But they wanted to have this available in their community. We can work with you. There are ways around it. That's kind of unusual, but LifeRing meetings actually do welcome anyone interested in learning more about recovery and how LifeRing works. And so we sometimes do have people who are loved ones of somebody, the person in recovery, who are attending LifeRing meetings. So basically, email me. I'd be happy to,
Excellent. Anyone else?
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. I knew about Akron because I worked at the, I reviewed a project, and it was the hotel where they met in downtown Akron. I forgot the name of the hotel where it became, but that's when M starts with an M, I think. I slipped my mind the name of the hotel, but it's was recently converted into like apartments or something, and I worked on that. And it's like, as they were taking me on the tour, they said, "This is the room where so and so met so and so and such AA." So it's kind of sweetly ironic that you're out of Akron. Yes, definitely.
Yeah, it was terrifying initially. For me, starting a meeting in LifeRing meeting in Akron, Ohio, and now that we have 3 meetings and we're it's been, that was in 2013 when I started the first one. it is kind of a sense of pride, actually. You know, hey, gosh, I managed to do it. You know, like.
Lindsay, looks like you have a question.
I have noticed that you allow crosstalk. So how do you control the people who talk too much, the overtalkers? And I imagine an AA meeting would have the same problem, even if they're just trying to get people to talk one at a time. But you're allowing people to have individual conversations while the main group is on a different conversation. Okay. What?
No. So it would be one at a time. That's kind of the group self-polices, but conveners, the people who facilitate LifeRing meetings, that's one of their responsibilities is to manage crosstalk. People are pretty good, you know. It depends on the size of the meeting and the composition. Are they a bunch of people who've been attending for a long time together so they know each other? You can read each other's clues. You know, no, we don't want side conversations going on, distracting from, you know, the speaker, whoever's talking gets, you know, people's attention. But then someone, when they pause, might, you know, ask a question or do. Actually, our online meetings, that became a little more challenging because it's harder to read body language. When Akron's in-person meetings went online, we sometimes also have people who are just on the phone. And so then you can't even see their face, or you can't, you know. So this is really super silly, but it's super simple and it works. In our Akron online meetings, when somebody wants to ask a question or make a comment, when the speaker, you know, takes a breath or something, the person who wants to say something says ring. And then at the first, you know, opportunity where it fits, then the speaker will say, okay, you know, Carl, what, you know, go ahead. And so, or the convener will do that. But if you have people who are familiar with LifeRing meetings and know how it works, they just kind of do it themselves. Did I answer your question?
And that works. They shut up. The ones who are talking too much. Do they shut up?
Oh, yeah, sometimes we just need to move things along. As a convener, you might need to, well, you know, wow, Carl, I'm picking on you. Carl, you know, it was great to hear about that, and I wish we had some more time. Maybe we can come back to you at the end. And, you know, there are little, you know, convening tricks that we use. You know, when we were in person, I used to, like, deliberately look at the clock, but I can't do that now. So that was a good one that worked with a lot of people, but not everybody. So it can be a problem, but it's typically not, and that's one of the roles of the convener, is to manage things like that.
And they don't, I guess the nuclear option would be to mute them, but they don't have to get to that point, because with the Zoom, that's now an option. Not okay.
No.
So much not of a problem. They don't even go to the nuclear option. Okay. Good to
No.
know.
The only time I am heavy on mute, but only about background noise, because it can get so distracting. I have never had to. That's not to say that, you know, if you're convening an online meeting, you have to have host controls just in case you get Zoom bombed or somebody becomes super inappropriate, or, you know, the convener is responsible for the safety of that meeting and its environment and keeping it positive and
Okay. And I got another question. Even though I never watched Breaking Bad, but somebody else wants to know, what if you have pink men in the meeting?
What if you have what?
Pink men in the meeting, which are drug pushers who come to the meeting to take advantage of the drug addicts.
I've never heard of that happening in a LifeRing meeting. A lot of LifeRing meetings are smaller. The format that we use, the conversational kind of, it works much better being smaller anyway. There are larger meetings. You know, I know I've seen it in 12-step meetings. that person might need to be asked to leave, but I don't think LifeRing would be like a LifeRing meeting would be a good use of their time, really. Like they're not going to have much interest. It would just, they'd be kind of wasting their time. When I've seen it in 12-step, it's been in huge, like 100+ person meetings that had a lot of people coming from like community-based treatment facilities and things like that. So there was a bit of a market. And I have seen where people were watched by and if someone caught them like starting to make a deal in the room, they were asked to leave. No, that's 12-step. And I'm not saying that happened because it's 12-step. It was just the nature, the size and composition, and it could happen to LifeRing someday. But
Okay, thank you.
mm-hmm.
Mary.
I've got on the call late. Is LifeRing national or international, like AA?
LifeRing is international.
Okay.
I will go back to my little international slide if I can. I'm not making you guys dizzy doing that, am I?
My niece is a clinical psychologist, and I don't know if she's heard of LifeRing. So I was going to bring that up as an alternative to AA.
That would be awesome. And Lisa S. at lifering.org. I'd be happy to get some more information. There we go. Here's the countries we have a physical presence in. And then we have, since the pandemic, a very strong online presence. So we have, people from all over. Even Sweden, which I've never been to one of their meetings, but they aren't English speaking, and I don't speak Swedish. So,
I have another question, if I may.
Uh-huh. Sure.
Do you know? I attend SMART some off and on, but a little bit more off and on.
Okay.
And I know, and I've read the Rational Recovery book and done their little website where you click through slides and it's supposed to help you, whatever. Anyway, do you know if these secular groups are working together to try to advocate for it being a approved choice through how do I put this? When you're told you have to do recovery, and those people that tell you that you have to do recovery tell you places, that varies depending on what your local government is and their policies and who they allow you to mention. And more like in Columbus area, from what I've gathered from those meetings, I've heard a lot of people saying, I just left Dublin Springs and this place was mentioned to me, SMART was mentioned, which is proof that they know they're cool with secular treatment. But our groups coming together to try to push that kind of inclusion throughout the country, especially areas that it seems like less likely, the red counties, the red states, et cetera, just to give a blanket statement of where that ideologically might not be as popular.
Yeah, well, and actually, even the blue areas are, But so I have a couple different answers. One is, there are more recovery organizations. I mentioned recovery coaches and them being open-minded. CCAR is an organization out of Connecticut that offers training for recovery coaches and accreditation. And I believe they also do an annual, or were doing pre-COVID, an annual like multiple pathways type conference. There's, voices, faces and voices. So there's a lot of like advocacy groups that are kind of more multiple pathway minded, more open-minded about things. And things are also dealt with on a local level. I knew somebody who was attending SOS meetings. They were under some kind of court jurisdiction, and their probation officer, parole officer, probation, I guess, would not accept attendance at SOS meetings, Secular Organizations for Sobriety. So this individual sicked the Foundation for the Freedom from Religion on the probation office, and they acquiesced really quickly.
Yep, because that would be individual
Yeah,
that would be individual jurisprudence. Each judge themselves can have an opinion whether or not this is an okay place for you to go to. Is it set that loosely where it's, or is it by the district or whatever decision?
Yeah, it is sometimes very individualized. Well, okay, I can share. In Akron, Ohio, we had one meeting. There was a treatment facility that was for women. It was hooked in with sort of the county stuff and a bunch of other treatment, inpatient, outpatient type stuff. And they were allowing the women to come to the LifeRing meeting. They were required to go to so many meetings. They were allowing it. When we started the second meeting in the Akron area, and these women wanted to go now to 2 LifeRing meetings, they decided no LifeRing meetings counted anymore. We had a couple of advocates within the organization, in particular an outpatient treatment counselor. And I was in communication with the director. Within about a year's time, there was an organization-wide ruling that LifeRing meetings had to be accepted by any part of their organization as a legitimate attendance at a recovery meeting. So I think sometimes you can work on it nationally, and you still have to maybe fight these battles on a more local level. But they're getting a little easier to win, maybe.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Sorry, I sometimes have audio issues with Zoom.
I get it.
Yeah. So you mentioned that I think it was SOS split off from LifeRing in 2000. Was that an ideological split, or why did that happen? Is there a difference in the approach or the ideology in some manner?
So SOS existed first. SOS actually used to be funded in part by the Center for Free Inquiry, I believe. SOS, there really aren't a lot of those meetings left. I was not around when it happened. There are various reasons given. I think ideology certainly played a part. And I hate to be cagey, but I would say Google it because I've heard a lot of different things, and I don't want to be responsible for telling one story over another.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Great. Anyone else? All right. I think we ran out of questions. So thank you, Lisa, for joining us. It's very good to hear about. Glad these things are out there. I know, I was watching a presentation. So where I found Lisa was I was watching a completely different presentation, and one of my friends, in fact, was talking about the 12 steps and how, your higher power could be anything you wanted to, because he was coming from Southern California. And I kind of laughed. I didn't chime in, but I was like, oh man, dude, yeah, that works for you, but it doesn't work for everybody.
And that's awesome that you have that awareness. And we have had, I don't know if I can overstate sometimes the fear that's in an individual or their loved ones about not doing the 12 steps, because that's just so ingrained. If I don't go to AA or at least NA or something, if I don't do the 12 steps, I'm not going to get better. I'm going to die. You know, and it's really heartbreaking that people you know, people need to be told, hey, what fits for you is what's going to work best for you, and this is a legitimate path. And there are enough barriers to people, you know, getting help and let alone being faced with that one.
Awesome.
You want to stop my screen share? I do not. Oh, there we go. I'm sorry. I didn't see this thing in the chat. So.
All right. So if there's no more questions, we'll make that the end of the formal meeting. And if people want to hang out afterwards and talk, we can do that for a bit. And thank you again, Lisa, for coming.
Sure.
Awesome.
Thank you for having me. And you can reach me, Lisa S. at LifeRing.org. If you have any questions, or you know, any facility or a professional that might need more information, we'd be happy to do that.
Awesome.